Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Court. Today we have another special episode. We have Dr. Carson McCall, the Chief Clinical Officer for the Robert Alexander Center for Recovery.
I am an Army brat. I grew up kind of around the country and around the world. My dad was a colonel in the Army, and so we moved really every summer my entire life. Really, since I've been in the field for the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of people be more transparent about substances in general. You know, when I was in college, I couldn't name one person that I knew that was sober. My therapist tells me all the time that you need to take aggressive care of yourself.
Welcome to Beyond the Court, where we dive into the stories of powerful female athletes. I'm your host, Tori Dilfer-Stringer, and each week we'll explore the triumphs, challenges, and passions that drive these student athletes both on and off the court. Let's get started.
Imagine facing a challenge every day that could hold you back. But for me, type 1 diabetes isn't a limit. It's a reason to inspire others. Spencer Stand is here to show kids that they can chase their dreams, no matter the obstacle. Through game day experiences, personal workouts, and virtual chats, Spencer Stand brings support, hope, and empowerment to kids with diabetes. Join me in making a stand. Visit spencerstand.com to learn more.
Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Court. Today we have another special episode. We have Dr. Carson McCall, the Chief Clinical Officer for the Robert Alexander Center for Recovery. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely, happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, I really just want to start with, any background you have in sport.
So I am an Army brat. I grew up kind of around the country and around the world. My dad was a colonel in the Army, and so we moved really every summer my entire life. And so the only sport that I really played was soccer growing up, and I played in a bunch of different places. But I did play on an international team in Germany. Wow. I was young, but it was pretty fun. But my dad and my brother have also been very active in sports. My brother is a great athlete, and he played high school football. He also played college football for Army. My dad played at Army, and so sports have really been kind of in my life as long as I've known. I also went to the University of Alabama, and so I'm a huge football fan, and I love sports, but I haven't played too much myself.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so then talk to me about your journey into what you're doing now. Getting your PhD, obviously, it's a process, but kind of just fill us in on that.
It's really funny. I didn't ever know that I wanted to work where I'm working, and it's kind of a long story, but I initially went to school and I thought that I wanted to work with kids and families. I worked with kids and families for about a year, and I realized that really wasn't really what I wanted to do, and I had told my supervisor at the time that I was going to go to dental school. I was like, I don't really like being a therapist. I don't think that I want to do this for forever. And he had suggested to me, he's like, we have an opening at the time at a different place on the detox unit doing substance use treatment. And he's like, why don't you try that and see how you feel? And if you really still don't like that, then you can go to dental school. You can quit and go to dental school. So I said, okay. And I worked there for maybe 3 weeks. And I was like, this is what I want to do. These are my people. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so very quickly, I knew that this is what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be.
Wow. Okay. So you're in therapy now. You realize it's what you want to do. Obviously, our topic today is mostly around mental health. Yeah. And obviously, that's an all-encompassing topic for anyone in life. But in the context of sport, where are you seeing, or I guess, what's the biggest impact that mental health, good or bad mental health, affects athletes, past athletes, current athletes, anything?
I think that's a great question. I think athletics in general is kind of really like any other high performance type of role. And so, in treatment where we work now and even with the clients that we serve. There's a lot of people who are in high performance roles, athletes included. And I think that mental health really, it kind of is make or break. Either you are doing well and you're able to excel in all the ways that you want to excel. And sometimes people struggle and that can negatively impact really everything. Yeah. So I think mental health kind of drives everything.
Yeah.
It really is kind of the foundation for how you perform, how you're doing, how you present, how successful you can be. I think that it really can really steer your trajectory.
Yeah. I think also one thing, so part of our context is college sports. Right. And I think people are hesitant to call substance abuse in college at that age because you don't think you've really taken it that far, but it's such a common issue. And from what I hear, whether it was my time as a collegiate athlete with teammates or now people that are still struggling with it, it's the outlet. It's I need to let off some steam. We had this long week of practice. I'm under this stressor. We have this coming up, whatever. And so then it's an outlet. It's letting off steam, but we see these patterns. Do you have any experience in that or the kind of, the path that might go on and how we can end that?
Yeah. I have personal experience too. I've been sober now for 5 years myself. Wow. But I think that some people call it substance abuse and really it's substance use, right? And so are you misusing it? Are you using it in ways that are not, as helpful as they could be? My substance misuse certainly was started in my college days. Alabama is known for being quote unquote a good time, and I certainly I struggled being in that environment, being away from home, being away from the structure and the accountability that I was used to. I grew up in a household that I knew what I was supposed to do day in and day out at what time, and so then being in a situation where I was removed from that was certainly a piece of that. And I also just didn't, partying was fun. And so, I see how substance use, especially it's also just so socially acceptable. And it is so common for you when you go to college that you go to parties and you do all these things and it can not necessarily get out of hand, but you can start to use partying as an outlet rather than using it for, doing other healthier things.
Yeah, instead. Social connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. This made me think of, there was a study a while back, and I believe it was just within NFL retirees. Mm-hmm. And the statistics for bankruptcy, divorce, and then substance abuse, and being, having to go to rehab, those kind of things, the stats are like off the charts. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's similar across the board with a lot of professional sports. And a lot of times they say the patterns start while you're playing. Mm-hmm. Again, it's an outlet, it's a good time, it's, letting off some steam from, the physical impact of sports. But then it turns into, okay, who am I after sports? Absolutely. And there's that big question. So I guess my question is, one, how can we better our use resources to, up our mental health, have tools so that when maybe times come to say goodbye to sports or while we're in the middle of it, how can we better equip ourselves to deal with those hard times instead of going to a substance use, misuse, abuse situation? I think,
it all starts with transparency. Even in the last, really since I've been in the field for the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of people be more transparent about substances in general. When I was in college, I couldn't name one person that I knew that was sober. I don't remember seeing famous people talk about sobriety. I don't remember people talking about struggling with things afterwards. And I think that, in the last 10 years, specifically with social media, that people have been able to be more transparent about their lives and about their experiences. And so you don't feel so alone. I think people think, when things end, when jobs end, when athletics end, that they feel alone in their experiences, and that's not the case. Yeah. I'd say a lot of times when I'm talking with clients or when I've worked with clients before, as former athletes, all of those things, the loss of the camaraderie, the loss of the team, the loss of the sense of community is certainly a huge deal. And I think that talking about it on the front end is something that is really huge. When I was in my doc program, the first class that we had, one of our professors told us that we needed to start preparing for the end that day. and told us, this is a really unique experience that you're going to have. These are people that are going to understand you in it's a 4-year program. You talk about a lot of things. You do really intensive work in a doc program, especially in a counseling doc program. Sure. And he beat into us the first day, like that this is going to end. And so you need to prepare for that. And so even when it did end, we were able to talk about it, and people talked about how they were struggling and how, an era comes to an end. I struggled leaving Alabama, you know, that was, I had an identity there. Athletics is an identity. I think that, on the front end, just talking about it and people being open and honest about their experiences and saying, I had a hard time when that ended. And I did things that, probably were not as helpful. A lot of times when I'm talking with clients about their substance use, there's a whole lot of stigma that goes with it. People think it's a moral failing or that it's a weakness that they've struggled with substances. And, I like to talk about or to tell them that it's not it's a bad coping skill. So we need to look at identifying and developing better coping skills that just aren't substances. And a lot of times for a lot of people, that's a sense of community and connection and finding that in different areas. And that can really supplement some of those feelings of emptiness and loneliness and all those kind of things that happen after a sport ends or after a period of life ends. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. That's so interesting. I think, you don't think you're going to, some people might think they know they're going to miss it, but I think a lot of times you're taken by surprise, the things that you do miss in it. And then it's almost like a subconscious, I guess, or just it's not an active decision to go fill it with something else. It just, it happens a lot of the time, or it feels like it does.
Yeah. It's like people retiring from work and they're like, what do I do with myself now? What am I supposed to do with my whole day? I have my whole day. And we see that a lot with clients who come in, they've retired and they don't know what else to do with their time. And it is lonely and it is scary. And it's a lot of fear. It's a lot of, uncomfortability, but I think that people talking about it, these kind of conversations that people have, I think that eliminates a lot of the shame and the stigma about saying, hey, I need help. Hey, I'm not doing okay. Definitely. Hey, I'm struggling. All of those things. Yeah,
definitely. Okay. So most of your work is done with substance use, but in the general mental health world, anytime, and I was going to ask, anytime you work with athletes, but let's just go to high performers. I love that you brought that up and that it's such a common theme. What are some of the main, I don't want to say issues, but I guess the main things you're addressing on the day-to-day, and then also the tools that you're helping to provide, or the processes that you guys go through?
I'd say number one is anxiety. I think anxiety shows up differently in everybody. Anxiety looks different, it presents differently, and you need to handle it differently. For some people, that may mean medication. That may mean medication adjustments. It may mean removing a medication. It may mean adding a medication. So I think that's certainly something that can help some people. For me in particular, it's exercise. I know that I am doing better if I'm exercising. If I'm not exercising or I haven't worked out for a week or whatever, the anxiety shows up in a lot of different areas of my life. So I think anxiety for sure is something that is prevalent among high performers. The desire to do well, people hold themselves to a really high standard, and if they don't always hit that, or they don't always meet the standard that they set for themselves, certainly that they can struggle and they can, people want to do well. I'd say depression is huge for people. I think depression shows up for people in ways also that they don't always expect. It's not always what it looks like on TV. It's not always what it looks like, if you Google depression, that can certainly look differently. And then, people have had difficult life experiences. And especially for athletes or for people who have been in these structured environments their whole life up until they're very young adults. A lot of times if your day and night is structured, you know what you're doing something Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those things are now removed. The rest of the world comes back in at that point. And so sometimes there's things that are unresolved. There's unresolved trauma. There's unresolved grief. There's unresolved things in their life that they haven't had the opportunity to deal with. If I can keep myself busy, I can keep myself from having to feel things too. So I think that certainly can show up for people, after, when your brain can quiet down.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting you say that. I personally, so I'm still playing professionally, and my first year and a half, 2 years of playing professionally, I was nonstop. It was season to a tiny little break and then another season, go. And this first long off season I've had, more things hit me than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
And it's been a hard but really amazing journey to walk through those and, tackle some of them and realize like, wow, I have so much work to do. Like, and I think that's something that part of the stigma around whether it be mental health or just struggling in general as a high performer is that a lot of us we've made it.
Yeah.
We've quote unquote made it.
Yeah.
So how could we still be struggling with these things, or how could we not be fulfilled in what we do? And gosh, I mean, more often than not, those are the ones that are struggling the hardest because we have that anxiety around wanting perfectionism or excellence or anything like that. And it's such an interesting, like it's just still not talked about enough. And that's another question I have is, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over your career in this field, whether it be in the way that you and clients interact or the tools or, just the scheme of the whole field in general? What are some of the changes you've seen over your time?
I think the best thing that I've seen, that I've experienced in my personal life and also in treatment, is that people are less nervous about sharing that they're sober, that they're in recovery, that whatever that looks like for them. There are a lot of people, there's a saying that some people say, like, recover out loud. And I don't necessarily advertise that I'm sober, but I certainly will share it if people ask. And I don't think that it's anything to be ashamed of. I certainly think that it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I don't think that I would be here today if I was sober. I think that I still would, have done okay. But I think that, my marriage is different because I met my husband when I was sober. I'm a mom now. All of these things in my life are certainly better because I'm sober, and I'm happy to share that with people. But I think just culturally, people recognize that sobriety is not always a bad thing. And I also think the younger generation doesn't always do things the way that we did them in college. Like I don't necessarily see my younger cousins acting the same ways that we did when we were freshmen in college. I mean, it just, I think that the discussion is shifting. More people are acknowledging that, like, substances, and not only just alcohol, but any substance in general, like that can sometimes be detrimental to people. And people have, I think social media has helped. I think Instagram has helped. I think kind of this like health movement and being your best self. Like, people understand that substances don't always allow you to be your best self. And so, I'd say the younger generation does a lot better about, making better choices, I think, sometimes. And then just also understanding that recovery and sobriety is like something to be proud of and not something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I think, like, if I can even just look back at from maybe if I was even thinking about those things, whether it be in high school or just seeing examples of things, can't point to any. And now I'm like, wow, like there's so many amazing examples. And even just, I think of teammates I've had that like set a standard in college for me that like, you don't have to be under the influence to have a good time.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful that I had those examples. I know not everybody does, but I do think that they're starting to pop up more and more often. And and as you just get older, like a lot of times you're seeing, like, you would think, oh, the 21 pluses are the ones being crazy on, college campuses. But really it's, like you said, that, that pressure, societal pressure when we're younger, that it's part of the college experience. But really you see a lot of these juniors, seniors are like, gosh, that was so not fulfilling. And it led me down a dark path. And it's amazing that, there's a lot of girls and guys, understanding that earlier on. And I think, like you said, like, that's one of the beautiful things about social media these days is that we can see those examples. Okay, follow up to that is, how much work do we still have to do though to, I think one of the catchphrases is end the stigma, and there's amazing resources. There's, even just in my time of being an athlete, I've seen this huge change, but there's still work to do. There always will be, but what are the main things that I think as a society, I guess, but in our sports realm that we can really, push the envelope and get better at in this?
I think that you're doing it right now. I think that, you have a platform, you have connections, especially in U of L, right? Like you said, you still, you're an alumni, you played volleyball, you have a voice, you are somebody that people probably look up to and people care about what you say and that the things that you say carry weight. And so people that have platforms to be able to, give me an opportunity to share the things that I've experienced and to give other people opportunity to say, I'm sober, or, I've struggled with mental health, or these are the things that I'm doing. I mean, that is far reaching, and that allows the stigma to kind of dissolve for people that watch that. I think that's a huge piece of it. I think that the way that people talk about recovery, I talk about working in the treatment field all the time. People ask me what I do all the time. I have conversations with my husband's friends, all the people that he knows and his family, and every time that I say that I'm sober, every time that I say that I work in treatment, it immediately allows people the opportunity to share things with me, whether it's about them personally or about somebody that they love. Mental health struggles, substance use struggles, they don't discriminate. There's not anybody that I've met that hasn't said, you know what, I know somebody, or I have a hard time, or whatever. And so I think that people being able to be transparent and to be, open and honest about, life is really hard. Things are not always easy, and the more that people just talk about it, and the more that people allow for space for people to share their experiences, I think that that's where the work really is. The more people that talk about it, the more people like you that offer platforms for it, I think that's just really, you're doing it.
Well, thank you. It means a lot. And I do think that there's been huge growth on, say college campuses in general, just resources and, opportunities to talk about it. I mean, and even those resources, then maybe not every athlete is utilizing them personally, but there's one player on a team, maybe a senior that everybody looks to, and she went and had a meeting and then shared it with the freshmen and was like, this was just super helpful. I mean, that opens a whole new door for this young girl or guy to be like, oh, wow, the person that I'm looking up to that's setting, this path for me is taking care of themselves, and they're struggling, but they're, they're not just allowing it to overcome them. They're, active about it. And I think the changes that I've seen are amazing. And so to hear that, you're seeing the conversations too, and it's really cool. But I do think that it's one of those things you have to keep pounding. It's just, it's such a hard thing.
Especially for people who are high performers, especially people that have a goal in mind. My therapist tells me all the time that you need to take aggressive care of yourself. Not just care of yourself, aggressive care of yourself. On the days that you don't want to do it, those are the days that you need it the most. And I think anybody that's in a demanding role where they, sports, you have expectations. People have personal expectations of themselves. You have expectations from your coach. If you're a college athlete, you have expectations from the fan base about, what they think you guys should or should not be able to do. And so in turn, you, with that much expectations comes just as much internal pressure. And so you have to combat that somehow, and you have to take care of yourself, and you have to take care of yourself aggressively and be proactive. I sometimes say when I'm working with clients, you got to get in front of yourself before it's time for that something happens. You have to take care of yourself in advance. Those things are really important, because you can't plan for a bad day. You can't schedule a bad day. So you have to have those things in place. I work out at 5:30 in the morning when I go. I work out at 5:30 in the morning because that's the only time that I can, you have to kind of get myself at baseline before the day starts.
Wow. Wow. That's so good. I love that you have to be aggressive about your care.
Absolutely.
And that just goes so in line with the high performing, mind.
Absolutely.
If you're going to,
you can't do anything gently.
Exactly. We're going to go all out in it. But it's so true. It really applies to the way that we show up every day, show up for ourselves, and then in turn show up for teammates or, the people that are looking up to us. So,
absolutely.
Wow, this was incredibly impactful to me. I know it will be to so many people. So thank you for what you're doing, your passion for this field, and just for sharing your knowledge. This is amazing. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's it for today's episode of Beyond the Court. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to share and subscribe to Floyd Street Media on all platforms. I'm Tori Dilfer-Stringer. We'll see you next time.